Technical fouls are a part of the game. We need to have a basic understanding of several factors in order to adjudicate technical fouls properly. That's what we're doing today. We're going to look at technical fouls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. So, the first thing we have to be aware of with technical fouls is we need to know the correct category of foul. We need to know what kind of technical it is. Oftentimes you will see officials and they are asked about a rule scenario or what have you, and the response is, oh, that's a technical foul, right? But without properly categorizing what kind of technical foul it is, we are at risk of administering and adjudicating a play improperly. So we need to know the category of technical. There are 5. There's an administrative technical, team technical, substitute technical, player technical, bench technical. Those are our 5. We need to know which category because it's going to affect various aspects of the game. So we also need to know a window to assess. Technical fouls sometimes come with a limited window in which we can assess that technical foul. And if we are past that window, then we are not empowered to assess a technical foul in that instance. So we need to know that window. We also need to know what the penalty is. Great news, National Federation of High School Basketball rules, the penalties are very straightforward and similar for all technical fouls. And then we need to know how to administer and the resulting free throws and penalties and resume the game. And again, great news there, as it is very straightforward and simple. So those are our things we need to know: the correct category, the window to assess what the penalty is, and how to administer and resume. Again, our 5 categories of technical foul are administrative, team, substitute, player, or bench. We need to know what kind of technical foul we have. So today we're going to review each of these 5 categories. Each of them has something in the rules that clearly outlines what the correct administration or what the fouls in these categories constitute. First of all, as we always like to do, let's start with the definition of a technical foul. And we can find that in Rule 419, Article 5. A technical foul is a foul by a non-player. A player on the bench steps up and shoves a player on the court. A foul by a non-player. B, a non-contact foul by a player. And that's critical to understand, is that technical fouls are not contact fouls. If a player commits illegal contact, it cannot be a technical foul during live ball play. It cannot be a technical foul by rule. C, an intentional or flagrant contact foul while the ball is dead, except a foul by an airborne shooter. So this addresses dead ball contact. After the play, one player doesn't like what the other player did and they shove them. Dead ball contact is going to be an intentional or flagrant technical foul. D, a direct technical charge to the head coach because of his or her actions. Right? Very specific here. Coach has bad behavior. Coach gets a direct technical foul. And it also addresses here E, an indirect technical charge to the head coach as a result of a bench technical foul being assessed to team personnel. So the head coach is responsible for the behavior of bench personnel, and bench personnel is always defined by rule. Coach is responsible for that behavior. And any behavior that rises to the level of a technical foul by bench personnel is also indirectly charged to the head coach. Let's take a look at Rule 10, Section 1, the administrative technical foul. Okay, administrative technical fouls are really important to understand, rules and restrictions, because they are basically bookkeeping criteria, right? The Submission of a team roster and starters is a responsibility that teams have. They have a time period in which they need to do that. If there is an inaccuracy in the information supplied by the teams with their rosters and starters, they are at risk of administrative technical foul. That information is then transcribed into the scorebook. If the information itself proves to be inaccurate, as in we did not list a player on our roster and we have to add a player after the game has started or after the 10-minute mark, teams are at risk of a technical foul, administrative technical foul in this instance. So Article 1, fail to supply the scorer with the name and number of each team member who may participate and designate the 5 starting players at least 10 minutes before the scheduled starting time. After the 10-minute mark, to make a change in a designated starter unless necessitated by injury or illness, to add a name to the team member list, require the scorer to change a team member's or player's number in the scorebook, require a player to change to the number in the scorebook, or have identical numbers on team members' jerseys. Right? This is really straightforward. Teams need to accurately supply a list of their roster, team members who may participate, and designated starters. That is the responsibility of each team. Recognize, though, that this does not require that teams ensure accuracy of what is transcribed into the scorebook. Teams are required to supply the information. If I'm a visiting team and I supply you with my roster and my starters and the scorekeeper makes a mistake, that's not on me, right? So we need to know that what the team's responsibility is to supply a roster of team members who may participate and designated starters and do it prior to the 10-minute mark. Now, if they do that, the information is transcribed into the scorebook, and at some point after the 10-minute mark, a change has to be made, then the team is at risk for an administrative technical foul. One of the key components, though, of administrative technical fouls is that all bookkeeping errors are limited to 1 technical foul per team. So a team puts in their roster and their numbers are all wrong, right? They put in their visiting roster and not their home roster, whatever. They've 10 players with wrong numbers. We don't assess 10 technical fouls. We only assess 1 administrative technical foul for roster-related issues per game. Article 3, extremely rare, use a megaphone or electronic communication device, right? Super obscure. Article 4, fail to occupy a team member's bench to which it was assigned. Also super obscure. The key takeaway from this rule and restrictions, teams are responsible to provide accurate information, and if, after they have supplied the information, after the 10-minute mark or after the game has begun, changes need to be made, that team is at risk of an administrative technical foul. Now, the first 2 articles are the most important: failure to supply and then errors within the information supplied. Both of those could receive technical fouls. Article 1 could be, I submitted my roster at the 2-minute mark. I'm assessed an administrative technical foul for the delay in submitting the information. And then Article 2, there's an error in the submitted information that is discovered at some point during the game. It's Article 2 that the limit of 1 per game is referred to, is in reference to. So after the 10-minute mark, it's discovered this player, their number is incorrect in the book. A change has to be made, administrative technical foul. 10 minutes later, another player, it's discovered their number is not in the book. We have to add them to the book. we'd be at risk for administrative technical foul, but we've already used the one related to information that has been submitted. So that's where our maximum lies, in Article 1 or in Article 2. All right, so that's a look at the administrative technical foul. Let's take a look now at team technical, right? A little more meaty. Allow the game to develop into an actionless contest. Much more by delaying things, etc. Consuming a full minute through not being ready to start either half. Delay the game by preventing the ball to be promptly being made live. Commit a violation of a throw-in boundary plane after any team warning for delay. Contact or huddle 2 or more players in the lane prior to the free throw. Interfering with the ball following a goal, etc. Not having the court ready for play, right? Article 2, to have more than 5 team players participating simultaneously, 6 players on the court. Request an excess timeout. Commit an unsporting foul. Article 5, fail to have all players return to the court after a timeout or intermission. Allow players to lock arms or grasp teammates. Right, so we have the team technical fouls laid out in Rule 10, Section 2. Team technical fouls, right, are going to often relate to the 5 warnings for delay, breaking the plane, etc. If a delay of game warning has been given and a team commits something that would incur a delay of game warning violation, that they don't have to match up, right? The delay, 30-second timeout, team has water on the floor. We'd have to delay the game to clean up the water and ensure it's a safe environment. That's going to be a delay of game warning on that team, and then subsequently they do perform one of the other actions, such as penetrate or contact the ball after a made goal, preventing the opponent from getting the ball promptly. That would be something that rose to the level of delay of game warning. So since a delay of game warning has been issued, that would be a team technical by rule. Right? Also important to note, of these things, some are much more common than others. Failure to have all players return to the court approximately the same time, very rare, but a rule. Allow players to lock arms or grasp a teammate in an effort to restrict movement of an opponent, extremely rare, but much more common to request an excess timeout. Important to recognize, though, that this is a team technical foul and not related to the player or the head coach. If the head coach, out of timeout, says, timeout, timeout, right, and we grant the timeout, it's not on the coach. The player, in the middle of the floor, in distress, timeout, ref, timeout, right? We grant the timeout, which we are obligated to do by rule, even if we know that they are out of timeouts. It is not on the player. It is a team technical foul by rule. And that's, of course, what we're really trying to understand here is what category of technical foul is this? We have to have that answer in any technical foul situation in order to adjudicate plays properly. All right, so the team technicals, covered those. Let's take a look now at the substitute technical, right? Really simple and straightforward, right? NFHS says, okay, look, a player has left the bench and has come to the table. They are away from the head coach's control. That player runs onto the court, enters early, it fails to be beckoned onto the court, etc. That is a substitute technical, but it's not related to the head coach, even though that player is bench personnel, right? we give a little special exemption here. Coach, you're not responsible for this player's behavior when the behavior is simply running onto the court, not being beckoned, etc. So if we look at the specifics, a substitute must not enter the court without reporting to the scorer, or Article 2, without being beckoned by an official, except between quarters and during timeouts. Right? During a time, coach calls a timeout, sends 2 subs to the table. The 2 subs go to the table and say, hey, I'm substituting in. And the scorer says, okay, 12 and 15 are entering the game. Okay, those are non-administered substitutes, right? Legal by rule. But during the game, during non-intermissions and timeouts, substitutes must be beckoned onto the court by the officials. So if a player violates or a team member violates, in this instance, it is a substitute technical. The substitute technical goes on the player, not on the head coach, right? Goes on the player. And we obviously need to know when these situations, what the window is for discoverability on these situations. That's going to be crucial. All right, player technical. Right? A much meatier section. There are many things that players can do that rise to the level of technical foul. It's also very straightforward, right? When a player commits one of these actions, we're not confused about, wait, is this a substitute? Is this a team? Is this, right? It's pretty much going to be on the player and therefore easier to adjudicate. But a player must not participate after changing his or her number without reporting that fact. A blood situation occurs. Player has blood on their jersey, switches jerseys, which is allowed by rule, but fails to inform the scorer. That would certainly be something we'd want to manage through and administer properly. Purposefully and or deceitfully delay returning after being legally out of bounds. Grasp either basket at any time during the game except to prevent injury, dunk or stuff, or attempt to dunk or stuff a dead ball. Illegally contacting the backboard by placing a hand to gain an advantage, intentionally slapping or striking the backboard, causing the ring to vibrate while a try or tap is in flight, or is touching the backboard, or is in the basket, or in the cylinder above the basket. Article 5, delay the game by such acts as preventing the ball from being promptly made live or put in play, failing when in possession to immediately pass the ball to a nearer official when a whistle sounds, free throw, fails to be in the free throw semicircle when the official is ready to administer, and commit an unsporting foul. Right? Unsporting fouls are going to be a key component of this rule, right? We've had some minutia, less common things that are occurring, but obviously to commit an unsporting foul is a technical foul by rule. Disrespectfully addressing or contacting an official, gesturing, using inappropriate language or obscene gestures, baiting or taunting an opponent. And then there's a note that NFHS is extremely interested in officials penalizing any sort of baiting or taunting, unacceptable in National Federation of High School Basketball. Purposefully obstructing an opponent's vision by waving a hand near their face, climbing on or lifting a teammate to secure greater height, faking being fouled, using alcohol, tobacco, removing a jersey or pants within the visual confines of the playing area, leave the playing court for an unauthorized reason, right? Some of these are relatively obscure. The key components here are obviously disrespecting the officials, disrespecting an opponent, using inappropriate language, baiting or taunting an opponent. Unacceptable by rule. These are going to be the most common elements in this situation. Article 7, contacting an opponent when the ball is dead and such contact is not a personal foul. That would be a dead ball contact foul, either intentional or flagrant. Be charged with fighting, commit goaltending during a free throw, reach through a boundary plane, or touch or dislodge the ball, as in 9-2 penalty 3. Okay, so we have a rundown of all the things that are player technical fouls. Now, it's really important that we get player technical fouls correct, because a player can get, if they receive a second technical foul during the game, they are disqualified by rule. Anything that leads to a disqualification of players or impingement on the coach for they're losing their privilege to stand and coach their team, these kind of things are really important in terms of us categorizing correctly what technical foul we are assessing. If we inappropriately assess an indirect technical foul to a head coach and remove their ability to stand and coach their team, we have essentially created a fairness situation where the other team is gaining an advantage by that fact. Potentially, not necessarily. Sometimes it's the best thing for a coach to lose that privilege, even erroneously. But obviously that's a mistake we don't want to make. And critical, of course, is if we assess a tactical foul that is to a player and it should not have been assessed to them, they are then at risk of being disqualified for a second technical foul, and that would be an erroneous ruling on our part. Okay, so critical to understand what category of technical foul. Let's move next to the bench technical, and this is a really important area for understanding, because remember, well, first of all, the coach, when they receive a technical foul, it becomes really simple. That is a direct technical foul on the head coach, and we'll cover those things. But the coach is responsible for bench personnel, and bench personnel commit a technical foul or are assessed a technical foul. That responsibility is indirectly applied to the head coach. So understanding bench technical fouls is critical. So the head coach is responsible for his or her own conduct and behavior, as well as substitutes, disqualified team members, and other bench personnel. Bench personnel, including the head coach, must not commit an unsporting foul by disrespectfully addressing the official, attempting to influence an official's decision, using inappropriate language or gestures, disrespectfully addressing, baiting, or taunting an opponent. And again, there's the note that NFHS will not accept any form of taunting, especially if it includes basis of race, religion, gender, or national origin. That's a high priority for National Federation of High School. Objecting to an official's decision by rising from the bench or using gestures, inciting undesirable crowd reactions, being charged with fighting. This is going to refer to bench personnel. Removing the jersey and or pants skirt within the visual confines of the playing area, grasping either basket to prevent injury, dunking, or attempting to dunk or stuff a dead ball. Of course, that last one would be pre-game and halftime warm-up situations. Dunking is specifically prohibited by rule. Enter the court unless by permission of an official to attend an injured player, so coach stepping onto the court. Use alcohol or any form of tobacco. Stand at the team bench while the clock is running or is stopped, and must remain seated except the head coach, right? So bench personnel cannot remain standing during live ball play. Of course, important to remember that all bench personnel are allowed to react to the game. An exciting play happens, everybody on the bench jumps up, celebrates, high five, they do some team-oriented thing that celebrates their player, etc. But they, after that initial reaction, are required to remain seated. And Article 5 is an important one. Leave the confines of the bench during a fight or when a fight may occur, right? And we have penalties for all of these situations. If we look, though, predominantly the bench technical is addressing behavior of the coach and assistant coaches and team members on the bench, right? A lot of times, a lot of the components here are addressing the coach behavior, trying to influence a decision, etc. This is going to predominantly fall to the level of the head coach. It could be an assistant coach. Rarely will it be a team member who's saying, trying to influence a decision from the bench. Okay, but our bench technical fouls here are clearly outlined by rule, and this puts us in a position where we now have an understanding of each of the 5 categories of technical foul: administrative technical foul, team technical foul, substitute technical foul, player technical foul, and bench technical foul. This is an overview of those categories. We need to know which we're assessing. Okay? Now let's talk about the administration of penalties in technical foul situations. And here's the great news. Unlike other levels where there's different administration of penalties, in National Federation of High School, it's really, really simple. Always, the offended team receives 2 free throws that can be sought by any player or eligible substitute, and they receive the ball for a division line throw-in opposite the table. Administrative technical foul, what are we going to do? 2 free throws, ball at the division line. Substitute technical foul, what are we going to do? The same thing. Team technical, player technical, technical on the head coach, always the same penalty. 2 free throws, the ball for division line throw-in opposite the table. We need to know all the things. We need to know who can attempt those free throws and what the restrictions are, etc. There's lots more to officiating the game of high school basketball, but the penalty is simple and straightforward. The other key component when it comes to technical fouls is recognizing that indirect technical fouls, where the coach is receiving an indirect technical foul relating to the behavior of bench personnel. There is no penalty in itself for an indirect technical foul. Assistant coach makes a fool of themselves. We assess a technical foul on the assistant coach. The head coach receives an indirect technical foul and will then lose their privilege to stand and coach their team. But we are going to shoot 2 technical fouls related to the technical foul on the assistant, but we will not shoot, or there's no penalty related to the designation of an indirect technical foul. Now, the head coach carries with them the responsibility, and if they receive a third of any combination of direct technical fouls and indirect technical fouls, they would be disqualified or ejected rather by rule and have to leave the confines of the game. Okay, so the indirect fouls can accumulate and have an effect on the head coach, but for indirect technical fouls, there are never free throws shot. It's just a designation assigned to the head coach that bench personnel, who they are required to control the behavior of, have committed a technical foul. Let's review. We need to understand when it comes to technical fouls, what type of technical foul is it? That's critical. We need to know what our window of opportunity is to assess a technical foul. A substitute was not beckoned onto the court. They played basketball. They left the court. They're on the bench. At some point, the book says, hey, ref, that player wasn't in the book, right? But our window to assess a substitute technical in that instance, or an administrative technical, has passed by rule. So we need to know those windows. We need to know the penalty. Great news. It's simple, straightforward. 2 free throws and the ball for a division line throw-in. And we need to know how to administer and resume the game. are categories of technical fouls that we have to dominate and own completely when we go on the basketball court. The administrative technical, team technical, substitute technical, player technical, and bench technical. And the bench technical, of course, brings with it different considerations with indirect technical fouls, and we need to be experts at that as well. So today we've had an overview of technical fouls and National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Simple, straightforward. We're just getting an inch deep, right, on how to assess these technical fouls, etc. But we've given an overview of the technical fouls, the 5 scenarios we need to be aware of. And this should be able to help us as we officiate games in National Federation of High School Basketball rules. Thanks for joining us today for the presentation. Again, later in the week, we'll have Basketball Rules Expert. We'll cover play scenarios. And on 5 Play Friday, we will look at video of play scenarios as well, so we have a better understanding of how to adjudicate technical fouls in National Federation of High School Basketball rules.